Welcome to the January 30th hybrid meeting of the planning board. I'd like to take a roll call vote. Ms. Creighton.
Here.
Mr. Felicio. Ms. Foley.
Here.
Mr. Olney. Here. Gilbert.
Here.
Welcome.
Thank you. Here.
As always, asked to be recognized by the chair. Wish to speak. This meeting is being recorded. First item on the agenda is public comments. Items not on the agenda with a limited amount of time. Would anyone from the public like to speak? Okay. So this is a working meeting with the planning board on proposed warrant articles. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to our vice chair, Sarah Creighton, to go over the work plan and the warrant articles proposed.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So as everybody knows, we came up with a whole pile of zoning changes, and a couple members suggested others that we might want to advance. And tonight, I thought, or as we had talked about last meeting and the meeting before, that we would be talking about what articles to advance to a public hearing, and then from the public hearing, which ones we would advance to the warrant. So I thought tonight we would talk particularly about, I mean, obviously they're related. You can't have something on the warrant without having a public hearing, but the public hearing does not necessarily mean it needs to go to the warrant. And one of the things we don't know yet is the size of the warrant. It is an annual town meeting, so it obviously has the regular town business. But when we get in a couple of weeks, the select board will know better how many other things are on the warrant, and then we can work with them, I think, to hone our list if necessary.
You're the school liaison. Do you know, is the Prop 2.5? I'm trying to pay attention.
I have a liaison, but I haven't been paying attention, so I don't know.
I don't think
the answer to that.
Okay. I just was curious what that was going to look like.
The schedule that we proposed in the last two meetings would be to have the public hearing on February 20th. It's a regular meeting, which means that we will post for that meeting tomorrow. So we do need to make some decisions tonight about what things we take to a public hearing. The reason to do it February 20th.
I don't think it's the 20th.
You said 27.
27th. What's our
13 and then 27.
That 27th. Okay, sorry. Maybe we have one more week to post, but nonetheless, between now and our next meeting, we will need to post this. Betsy and I will figure out what that date is.
February 1st.
February 1st is
you're
okay. I don't have that. February 27th. Thank you. February 1st is the posting date, which is tomorrow, which is terrifying. The reason to have it on the 27th is that the warrant closes on March 1st, I believe. So
February 1st is Wednesday, just the next day.
But we can't post to the Cricket on Wednesday. You have to post it on Tuesday.
I think it's March 4th.
Is the closing date. So, the other thing is, if there's some sort of a posting snafu, gives us another week we could delay a week if necessary. So I think given our experience just about a year ago, that would be smart. So I think we've talked about the schedule, and what we did is we listed, Betsy and I did talk about the issues. We talked about them in the last two meetings, and they're listed on the agenda. And so I thought we would just take them one at a time to discuss whether we want to put them forward to a public hearing. And if people have a strong feeling about the warrant, obviously they're related. You can talk about that. So the first item that
Sarah, can I ask
absolutely.
scheduling question before we move along?
So on here, it's saying the public hearing is February 27th, and we would finalize the warrant by March 6th. So that means we're going to have the hearing and then discuss it and finalize it in one meeting.
I think we have to look at the calendar at when the select board really needs it. I've heard Greg has given me a couple different dates, so we may have to have a working session to finalize it if we can't do it the night of the public hearing.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a lot of time to me.
It is not a lot of time.
There,
You're right. But
the articles we're proposing aren't.
Well, depends what we
Depends on-
choose.
that's
Right.
true.
so,
So could we talk a little more about strategy before we just go article by
Sure.
article? And is there a request from the moderator or the select board to keep this to a smaller group of articles?
I think that Ron said that at the prior meeting that there was a request to keep it short. And I think strategically that would be, it's my opinion. I share that opinion. I'm not sure that there's a specific number. I think if they are matters that don't have, I think it's a time,
Yeah.
in my opinion,
Yeah.
sort of a time.
Right.
So I think we could, so my opinion on strategy, and then, which is my opinion, not necessarily shared, is that we might do the administrative things and take up one sort of more meaty kinds of things, or things that are sort of easy to understand and either are a matter of opinion, yes or no. So that's, and one thing where it might be helpful to get the town meeting input so that we know what their view is on the issue, but go ahead,
I'm just brainstorming here with everybody. Because I know we can, really dive in and get into the details, but of the particular articles. If we have a lot coming up with the 40A and lots of work to do to that, and some potentially full town meeting agendas over the next few years or a couple of years with this. So what I'm thinking of is, perhaps we don't focus on the smaller ones, and I'm not suggesting we get all the big ones through, but maybe take one that feels meaningful to the group. And maybe it's different from what the 40A is going to be. So if the 40A can't be about senior housing, we could say, okay, let's look at senior housing, and that's all we're going to do, or we're going to pick, two. But when I look at, like the swimming pool permitting issue, going from special permit to by right, it's going to result in the same outcome based on what we're hearing from the ZBA. So people get their swimming pools and they either have to go through a little bit of extra process, or just process, not extra process, but process to get to the swimming pool, or they can have a by right swimming pool. So rather than, that can probably wait. It's not really going to have a meaningful outcome in the larger sense of the town. So maybe if we can all decide before we, go back and forth about what's in and out of swimming pool, which one do we really want to tackle and spend our time on that? Does that make sense to others here?
So I have a slightly different view on that, which is, as long as it's a simple up and down discussion and there won't be a lot of back and forth during town meeting, maybe those are the ones we should be concentrating on. So for example, the adult entertainment one, that no one's gonna have a great deal of discussion about that. That'd be easy to put up and vote through and be done with it. The most complicated one is actually the one we want done the most, which is section 12, which is how the whole thing gets implemented anyway. And I wonder if we shouldn't concentrate on that and make a really good case for it. So when it does come up at town meeting, there won't be a lot of talk about, well, we never seen this before, or this is, we can actually give them a side by side if we want, and let people, weeks before digest it so they know exactly what we're proposing.
You mean the administration?
Yeah.
Other people's thoughts about strategy?
I'm tending to lean with Laura.
My thoughts, I like Laura's idea a lot. I think it definitely merits looking into that angle. Because when we left town meeting and why we left town meeting, residents, what they conveyed at the meeting was, this is all too much at once. planning board needs to go back, get this in better order, provide more information, more detail, more analysis, more study, and we haven't done any of that. So I have an overarching concern that, one, we didn't listen to residents, and two, we're just regurgitating what we offered when there was an uproar against it. So I think we have to go back to the drawing board a bit on our process.
I think we have a difference of opinion about the town meeting. The town meeting didn't take up any of the articles after 8, whether they, and so it's hard to know. And there was a whole bunch of stuff going against us in terms of timing and the technology. So I think we have difference of opinion about.
Well, I'm just going by the people that stood up and spoke. Nobody's got up and spoken, but we're tired, we want to go home. What they voiced was that they didn't understand the changes, wanted more information, wanted it in a different format, wanted it redlined. I mean, I think we can all agree on that.
Actually, we don't agree on that, I don't think. I think what happened was a few people stood up and said exactly what you said, but every article that got taken up got passed by 2/3 of the people there or more. So it wasn't like there was an overwhelming wave of opposition to what we were doing.
No, I agree. What they were opposing were these media works that we're going to look at tonight.
Well, that's one of the things about a public hearing we could bring out. We could actually make that a topic. Which of these do you think we should be bringing to town meeting, folks?
And I agree with that. What I'm going through, I agree with that. I agree with that. We just don't have the time between the public hearing and getting the warrant ready. That's the problem.
I think we do. I think we just have to put our notes to the grindstone and do it. It's not like these are brand new things that we're dreaming up now.
But I mean, we're not putting them in any different format. We're not gonna have the time to say, okay, here's, whether it's a red line version, or here's the comparison side by side, or here's some studies we've done, or here's some analysis, or we don't have that time.
I think we have time to put a comparison together. I don't think they're that, I think we've gotten past the tough.
We have time between now and then, but if we go by Chris's suggestion to say we wait and see what they say at the hearing on the 27th, of which one we wanted to do, is that what you just said?
No, I'm just saying we should listen to what people say about which one we bring forward.
Laura?
Laura.
We can keep parsing out what happened at town meeting. I think at the end of the day, we'll all have some different views. I wasn't there, so I'm not even gonna try to do, Monday morning quarterbacking of that. But if maybe it's worth taking a straw poll around the table that if there is an interest on focusing on 1, 2, however many of these articles, what would it be? And, I've got my particular favorites, but I'm prepared to wait on some of these that I feel like, yes, they're all meaningful to the town, but what's really going to have the most or a beneficial outcome? And maybe it's a slightly different focus than what the 48, zoning is going to be looking at. So without leading you more than that, I mean, should we just go around and see whether there are a couple that we all agree we want to focus on, or everybody say 3 and we pick the overlapping 1 or 2? I don't know. Some thoughts on how we can not spend time tonight going through every article.
Right, my thought was that we didn't need to go through every article tonight,
Sorry about that. Misunderstood. I thought you were
I just
saying
wanted
pick them
to
one by
just
one.
clarify, and maybe this is what Betsy has her hand up before, that the swimming pools proposal came from Betsy based on a conversation she had with Sarah Melish and the building inspector, I believe. So Betsy, did you want to clarify anything?
I want to clarify a couple of things. First of all, I've gone through all of the bylaws that were considered for last fall's town meeting. And I have some pretty definite ideas about each of them in terms of whether they're ready or not for this town meeting. Secondly, you are correct that what happened was with the swimming pool situation was that Sarah Melish made a comment to me at one point about how they seem to have an overabundant number of swimming pool applications. And it was just, I guess they have a fairly full agenda. And in any case, she had hoped that something would happen, that somehow the language would be worded so that some of them could be done by right. So in response to that, in trying to be helpful, I did look at the minutes of the October 17th meeting. I did draft up something that was clearly a draft. And if you want to consider it, fine. If you don't want to consider it, fine. Additionally, I've had several emails with Mary about the floodplain bylaw, and she has brought to our attention that the floodplain bylaw really needs some work, and she's absolutely right. So I have gone through the draft that apparently was generated several years ago, and it needs to be totally gutted and started over. And specifically, there needs to be references to FEMA floodplain maps. The state has a really good template, which I think we can draw from that. The existing floodplain bylaw is not very good, and the present draft is not very good. So I think if Mary is willing, I would love to work with her on it for fall town meeting. I have consulted with various state and FEMA agencies, and I think that we could get it done for fall town meeting.
Mary?
And I apologize if I misconstrued or misinterpreted the bylaw that Mary submitted in a recent email.
I thought there was one with FEMA. Matt.
So, yeah, I just sent that email to clarify that I did not submit this bylaw, that the current floodplain bylaw was actually written by town council and passed on to Sue Brown, the town planner. So I just wanted to clarify that for anybody's concern. I did not write it.
It was written by town council?
Town council. So, and I agree with Betsy, it needs a lot of work, but that would be on my priority list for the spring, because it intersects with MBTA zoning, and we have to make sure we get as up-to-date FEMA maps as possible, and the floodplain is fully vetted. So I would be happy to work with you, Betsy, I think, but it needs to be more of a priority than the fall. It's my
I
opinion.
don't think it's possible. It's not possible to do it for Springtown meeting because it has to go through the reviews of 2 agencies.
That's true.
So I've already checked that out. I did talk with the planning director in Gloucester, who has recently worked with city council in Gloucester on adoption of a new floodplain bylaw. And he was 2 years in the making of that bylaw. So, we're going to be 8 months in the making of that bylaw. So, but we need to have my particular concern, and I ended up redrafting a floodplain bylaw in Winchester. If you don't have the right language, the right maps referenced in the bylaw, you could lose your FEMA floodplain status. So I think fall is the earliest we're going to be able to do that.
Okay, fair points, agreed.
So, can we take that, is there any disagreement? Let's just, on that one, it's on our list, I believe. Is there any disagreement that we should table the floodplain and work on it for a November or fall town meeting?
Laura.
Just
Yeah.
a couple of questions. So FEMA maps are backward looking just by their nature. Past floods. Mapping or maybe doing projections about flood maps, but maybe they can run on parallel tracks where you're kind of working on the language, but we are also, may want to incorporate some of the findings of that study. And I think it's about a 6 months duration. It seems like the two are going to want to be knit together.
But that's an opportunity, right? If
That is an
that's-
opportunity. I'm not saying stop,
No.
don't do anything on the floodplain, but let's make sure that as you work on it and advance it, there's room to bring
Absolutely.
in the findings of this coastal
I think
resiliency study.
I think that I agree with that we need to upgrade our floodplain zoning for sure, but. And so I would sort of wholeheartedly support moving it ahead in the fall. But I think we don't have what we need to do it in the spring.
What is our floodplain map data? Is it 2018?
14. Some it's 14 and some it's 17.
Okay. And we haven't done flood projections in terms of like a design flood.
There was a grant with some of the coastal, so I don't know what they did.
There's a
The
couple.
municipal, the vulnerability plan outlines a bunch of things as well. So I think what we do is we aim for fall town meeting and work really hard to get that one done. And I think that the time that it will take the delays in it are going to be for FEMA and state reviews.
Yeah.
I think that Mary and I can come up with some really strong language. And I think we aim for fall town meeting.
I think that's.
All right, and Betsy, you were having other opinions on the other proposed warrant articles, or did you?
The senior housing, I don't think is ready yet. I think there's a bunch of things that could be added to that. Like conversion of an existing building to units, and clarifying density, just clarifying the bylaw in general. I think it could be, the language could be written to allow more options.
That's
So,
interesting.
Why don't you go through the list and give us your opinion on them, and then, because you're a fresh eye on them, so why don't you go through the list and just give us your high level opinion, then we can.
Okay, the administrative, I added a couple of sentences to that. On page 2, the planning board, 12.4, 12.4.1, establishment, a planning board shall consist of 7 elected members elected for 3-year terms. There is a provision in Mass General Law. It's 40A section 9, I believe, which states that 2 alternate members can be added to consider special permits should there be a board member who is a regular board member who can't be present, or who has a conflict. But it is solely for special permits. And it's in a situation if you have a regular board member who can't participate. Either they're absent, or they have a conflict of interest, or whatever. And that's right out of Mass General Law. So other than that change, which is an addition to 2 sentences to 12.1, 12.4.1, I think this section would be ready to go to town meeting.
is the alternate an elected position
I'll
or
read
a?
I'll
Well, that's a debate. I ended up putting in that it would be an appointed position. But I defer to the board and the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator on that one. I've got language in here that says 2 alternate members appointed by the board, a select board for 3-year terms. So that's something that it could be elected, it could be appointed.
All right, so why don't you, before we evaluate all of these, why don't you just go through the rest of your.
Okay.
So the
the-
admin just has a couple of changes, so is what you said.
That's the only change I had to the administrative one. The adult entertainment, I submitted a totally new draft to you, which is basically right out of Mass General Law. And it had my concern with the one that was being considered prior was a 1-page one. It did not have details. It did not have legal references. It didn't have a lot of information that it should. This, on the other hand, is very graphic, but it's right out of Mass General Law. So that is a potential one. Amendments to the existing accessory dwelling unit bylaw, I thought were okay. The new family dwelling unit, I was a little concerned about whether it had to be a family member or whether it was not clear to me in the bylaw, in the proposed language, whether it had to be a family member or not. So that could probably go through if it were clarified. Senior housing, I think that there's some additional options that could be included. Floodplain, we've already talked about. Residential cluster, the move to eliminate the minimum lot requirement and make minor changes in the language. I don't understand the history of removing the minimum lot requirement. I will tell you that when I worked in Drake, we had a 5-acre requirement and the quality of open space we got was awful. And the town engineer and I discussed the changing of that bylaw to make it a 10-acre requirement so that there would be more meaningful open space. So I don't know the background on that. So that was my major concern on that. Swimming pools, we've already discussed swimming pools.
So to sum it up, you're recommending the,
I'm recommending the administrative changes with my change to add the alternate members, and we need to clarify if they're elected or appointed. The adult entertainment is, I think, in pretty good shape. And either accessory dwellings or probably the amendments to accessory dwellings, or if we can clarify the family dwelling unit accessory dwelling bylaw section 9. I realize one of them is amending existing language and the other is a total rehaul. So one of those.
Oh, go ahead.
Sarah.
Oh.
Sorry.
So, sort of back to strategy, I would like to see us come out of the spring town meeting successful and unified if possible. So it's my opinion that the accessory dwelling unit new bylaw, it is confusing and is overlapping. It has the potential to not achieve that goal of success and unity For the board, and I think it does need, I believe it needs a bit more work. So I think so that's my opinion about that. I think the amendments to the accessory dwelling units of removing the double lot, removing the 1984 provision and the 4 parking spaces are clear, and we will hear whether people are for it or against it. And I would like to see us at least take that to the public hearing, because it's a move toward making accessory dwelling units easier or less restrictive, but not the, and it doesn't go to the by right, which is a whole nother level, which as written, the current one does not get, not by right, the simple majority to pass it. We still, the as written needs a 2/3 majority. So I would be from a strategy perspective, like to take the full replace section 9.1 and replace it with a new 9.1 off the table. And whether we want to amend the existing is another matter, but in terms of taking things, I think we're now,
I'm confused. You said take it off the table, but
Take it off the
put
table
it
for
to
the public.
hearing.
no, I would, sorry, there are 2 accessory dwelling unit
Okay.
provisions. One is the full replace section 9.1 with a new section 9.1. And the other is, so that's A, and B is to remove the double lot, the 1984, and the parking. I think it was Article 15 or 16, whichever one it was, 15, I think. So I would be for putting that one forward, but I would like to suggest that we not put a rewrite of the accessory dwelling unit. I feel that one was, in particular, was misunderstood, and that it's politically, I think there's a lot of difference of opinions. I don't know if anybody saw the article in the New York Times about accessory dwelling units, which was basically laid it right out, that some people very much are for them and some people are very much opposed. And I think that's an accurate, in my opinion, that's
So your opinion was to do the ADU, amended ADU, and then the administrative and the.
well, I was just taking them one at a time.
Okay. It's just
Jumping around.
trying to
Yeah.
get a consensus
Yeah.
on which ones, if any, we want to put forward.
Yeah, I guess
And it's-
strategy wise, I would disagree a little bit with Laura. I would like to see us get some of these administrative things done so that we can kind of say we did the administrative thing, get 12. That's the administrative changes, the adult entertainment. And table the swimming pools. I think I can wait. I agree with you on that. And at least the public hearing, I'd like to at least hear from people about the accessory dwelling unit, Article 15, those 3 small in words changes, whether you believe they're small in effect is
Should we do it the other way? Should we just scratch certain things and then see what we're
I mean,
left
that's
with?
kind of what I was.
Okay, I'm like,
Yeah. All right,
so we're scratching pools.
is there any agreement? Is there anybody who wants to take up pools and?
May I just say that scratching means putting in the parking lot, it's
Right.
not gone forever, we'll do it.
Yeah, right, okay. Okay, so is anybody in favor of pools for fall, from April? No,
Favor of
Okay.
scratching.
okay.
Sarah's not on.
Well, she took it off the table earlier. Does anybody want to, how about scratching the accessory dwelling units, the whole overhaul?
Agreed.
That's the the first one, a new I don't know.
14,
Yeah,
your old 14.
yes, the old 14, replace 9.1 with an entirely new 9.1. Does anybody want to speak for keeping that one? Okay,
Keep it in the parking lot.
keeping the parking
Back
lot,
there.
for sure, I think the accessory dwelling units remains a, so, full. Okay, so nobody wants to, so parking lot. How about the minor, the shorter of the old 15, which was to remove the 1984. The, to it, I'm saying.
I think it's a good idea. It's easy.
To me, my only concern with that one is that the non-conforming, if you don't, if your lot is really undersized and now you're adding a double unit, if you don't have enough size for one, let them know adding a second, so that's my
You
concern.
would need to have the, so,
Special permit, you have to get a special permit for it.
but
That's
it's,
all this is doing, is saying, for a special permit, you don't need a double lot. You need to have, you need to have a conforming lot.
conforming lot.
You don't need a double lot, which is what's required now.
Does it say conforming in the current bylaw?
No, it just says you have to have a lot, but if you have to have a lot that's twice as big as what's allowed.
But one of the things we could suggest would be a conforming lot, that would be a,
And that's my,
clarify that if
Sure,
we,
sure, that's fine.
okay. So to bring that to a public hearing and hear what people have to say. Betsy, can you look at that language in what it was Article 15? And make sure that it's clear that it needs to be a conforming lot?
Sure.
Okay. So that's to the public hearing.
So can I make this point? That's an issue.
But resolve it with saying conforming.
Yeah, I'm just
Okay.
giving my
Just-
points.
just
Yeah.
checking,
Just giving my point.
checking.
Okay, what do we?
I'm just trying.
So I think we have to be clear if with number 2, if we're saying shall have existed on the lot with an occupancy permit for 2 years. So I mean, assuming the building inspector will be verifying that. It's just not clear.
Is that in the current zone, the
Mhm.
current zoning language?
That's the proposed, was that we took out the
Well, the
1984, but it's still a special permit. The only changes would be to remove the double lot, but the language says delete except single residential E, the lot size shall be 2 times the minimum lot
Okay.
size.
Yep.
To delete single family dwelling shall have existed on lots as of March 1984 and replace with the single family dwelling shall have existed on a lot with the occupancy permit for 2 years. And then the third is to change off-street parking for at least 4 vehicles to off-street parking for at least 3 vehicles. So whatever requirements, which are special permit right now for an accessory dwelling unit would remain on the rest of the section 9.1, right?
No, thanks for clarifying that. Yes, I'm fine with bringing it forward and hearing what people say. If this document is moving forward, it's actually 9.1.2.2A.
Okay. It is, yeah, it does say 2.8.
No, there's 2 twos, there's 2.2.
Okay. Laura,
My opinion is those are good changes that strengthen the law and I'm always in favor of reducing parking amounts that have, preserve the character of the town and do impervious. So I would say, let's carry that forward for now to the town meeting, but I still.
public hearing.
Excuse me, to the public hearing, thank you. Should still go and look at our full bucket when we're done and say which
Absolutely.
ones are the priorities, so we don't
Agreed.
just keep.
I think that was my strategy is let's
Okay.
use the public hearing to hear from folks, but in a little simpler way.
Right, okay.
Okay, Chris, you want to talk about your thoughts about senior housing?
Yeah, I feel very strongly about advancing senior housing. And Betsy, I'm a little surprised at your comments about trying to broaden the applicability of the statute, which was, or the bylaw, which was drafted to make it as broad as possible. So I'd be curious to see what you'd like to add to it. But I think it should be brought to the public hearing anyway. If for no other reason, we're the only town in the North Shore, except maybe Essex, that doesn't really have any zoning. We're the only town that doesn't allow senior housing in it. And I think that's an abomination.
I would totally agree with you that it is an
With
abomination.
60% of it. So let's make this happen.
Okay. I'll take a look at it and try to redraft it.
Okay, now, you know, it was drafted by Mark Bobrowski. We didn't make too many changes to it at all. So for what it's worth, this isn't something that popped out of our heads here.
Okay. Well, I think Mark, I have a great deal of respect for Mark. I've worked with him for a number of years, but he tends to use certain templates that I think should be expanded.
Well, I'll be happy to, to work with you to expand them.
I would be more than happy. I was going to suggest that.
Okay,
So for
good.
the public hearing, perhaps we can get input on the various aspects of it and have sort of a smorgasbord of the
Sure.
existing with, some additional,
Well, let's see.
Language.
Let's see what the additional things are.
yeah.
So to Mary's point, if this gets complicated, we're gonna have to incorporate pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, are we voting on this goes to public hearing or we're just bringing it to public? Hearing?
We're just talking about it right now, so we'll have a slate.
But I mean,
Yeah.
So I actually have a question. So if we were to work on draft, if I'm going to work with, say, Chris wants, if we decide to go forward with the elderly housing for Springtown meeting, that's going to have to be done fairly quickly.
This week.
Right. So my question is, does legal counsel review these right before the warrant closes, or do we have access to legal counsel so that legal counsel can review, make recommendations so that we're putting forward a handful of articles at the hearing that don't have to be changed hugely?
So I think, well, first of all of the articles that were put forward before town meeting did have both Mark Bobrowski and town council review them, for better or for worse. So they have had a twice through.
They've had a legal scrub.
So, but I think it would be great if you can, if we have, so far we only have proposed one potentially substantive changes, perhaps might be to senior housing. So if we have other substantive changes, I think if you can work with Greg on getting town council, that would make sense to me before the hearing. So we're putting forward the best that we can.
So the adult entertainment establishments, I totally reworked that. So does it make sense for that to be reviewed by legal counsel before it goes to your hearing?
yes,
They don't,
Okay.
all those definitions are in the Mass General Law. They don't need to be that. We can just reference the law and we don't need to reiterate all the definitions in this zoning bylaws. So I'm not sure I'm in favor of the adult entertainment bylaw as written.
it's written by Betsy or Bobrowski.
Well, I think let me step in. I think our pattern has been that we've plucked out all the definitions from the proposed bylaws and just had a definition section. I would not propose that we put all of these in our definition section, but that's just me.
You can reference the law.
Just reference the state law.
Yeah,
Yeah.
reference the law and there was just some typos in there. It was, like it said, it outlined in section 2. I don't know what section 2 is. There was just some, just some.
Outline
references in-
section isn't section 2 your new section of definitions?
Yes.
So yeah, so if we're gonna, okay, so with that one outlined in, so.
So the definitions that are in the adult entertainment establishment would stay in that particular section of the bylaw. They would not go into the definition section because they would be scattered all over the definition section where you really need them in that specific section of
But I
bylaw.
think we had a conversation with Bobrowski that I think his original bylaw had all these definitions right at the front, and I think we all
I just
agreed,
simplify it.
yeah,
Put it all in one area. I don't know. Betsy, what did you write that's different than the general law? I mean, are there things that?
Yeah.
And we can just refer to the general law, don't you think?
Or word for word from.
Well, I can do that for some of the definitions, but the issue there is that anybody who's considering it, now has to go back and forth between documents and stuff. And I can give you a revision that takes all that stuff out of there, but it just seems to me to be better to have it in the bylaw. And quite frankly, I drafted a adult entertainment establishment bylaw in Greenland, New Hampshire. It was as a result of a mom and pop Italian restaurant being converted to an the new buyer wanted to convert it to an Orange Julius strip bar. And ultimately, what happened was we wrote a very detailed and a somewhat graphic bylaw because we all agreed that it was best to be as detailed as possible. So the prior bylaw did not really talk about the various types of adult entertainment establishments and really didn't really clarify what that exactly meant. So your choice, but I'm of the opinion that the more detail and the more explicit you can be, the better.
So can we just start with, before we get too much in the weeds on adult entertainment, whether or not we think we are sufficiently vulnerable that it's important without any regulations, whether we take the simpler one of the prior and then, or whether we go with this one, to me, I'll let the lawyers figure it out.
For other towns, I mean.
And say, no, I would say, do we think we're sufficiently vulnerable on this issue that that we just move it forward because
We don't have one.
Keep the original one that we had.
whichever one we
We don't
go
have
forward
one.
with.
We don't have,
From November.
well, from November.
From November.
Do we support
Do we
bringing this?
support
one
bringing
forward?
this issue
Whatever form we're
forward
taking.
in the spring, correct? Then we can decide what form. There's no spending time on the form if we're not gonna take it forward. So to me, if it's a vulnerability without any regulations that, it's in the LCD only is the, it is only allowed in the LCD, so. Yeah,
Actually,
Laura,
It's a risk to the town. We should have a regulation about it. So I would be in favor of moving it forward for that reason. And I think that it's an easy one to explain
Mhm.
because as long as we can make people understand that we're not trying to make it so that you can do this, but to protect the town because it's required to make it legal. And I would just say that, we took a similar approach on stormwater where we had a shorter regulation and then we referred to the Mass General Law. I think whatever protects us the best. And if let our town council advise us what that is. If there's a lot of stuff that makes people squeamish in the regulation, but it belongs there in order to protect the town, then we just need to explain it like this is so that those things are regulated. But if we can get by in a shorter law that then refers you back to the Mass General Law and that provides the same protection, then let's do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should bring it forward.
Okay, I think we have agreement that we should bring it forward in some form. Can, are you, say, can you, I guess maybe we can just get town council's guidance, if you're gonna check with them.
Which is
Get-
our best
get-
protection.
yeah.
Get
the
town
best-
council's
the best
guidance
aware
to
version, the
take
version we
the
have,
two
or
versions and,
something that just.
Right,
refers to
yeah.
Mass
It's
General.
not, that's the conversation, right, that we
Great.
don't want, this is why we're in this recodification process, because we have random definitions in each section, so. I mean, they're straight out of the law, there's no reason to me to reiterate them.
And one thing that might happen if we are explicit in the proposed bylaw, that might generate a whole 2-hour conversation that we don't want to
Or
spend.
if we just keep it at the law, that's current, the state keeps current
Yeah.
with case law, I mean, I think we actually might be doing ourselves a disservice to be so too specific, I don't know.
Sue, you got a comment?
I agree with what Christine just
Yeah.
said, and Laura's point also. When I read the initial law that was proposed and agreed by the planning board before, I thought that solved the problem of
Yeah.
it being a vulnerability. And then when I sat down and went through this, and I was looking back at the chapter that's referenced, 272, I mean, that's a criminal part of the code, and I'm not sure that reference belongs in here, but whether it stays or not, that's not a big deal. But I did feel like this was a little bit too much, and that it would. I would definitely, if you want to do a more extensive treatment of adult entertainment, I would think it would need a bit more work. But I did think the original one really fit the need.
And then you
I would support
refer
that.
to the general law.
It doesn't, not
Maybe it
that,
needs to do that.
not chapter 272. I don't, that's the one I don't know.
So maybe.
272, section 31.
Check that with the.
Yeah.
Well, the one we were proposing before did,
It does, it?
yeah, under conditions, 8.6.4.
I see
272 right
119.
here.
Oh, section 28. Yes.
And that's what this one.
This one is
That the person
31.
convicted
right.
of the sexual, of the,
Right,
That's the
right,
criminal.
of the
right,
criminal.
right.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were referring to this section 8.3, 8.6.3.6.
No, no.
Okay, you're doing a different section.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it was section 31 in the purpose and intent.
So if you did the simpler one, we might need to just insert a reference back to Mass General Law.
Or what is an adult
Citation.
entertainment establishment? That's the question.
I think it solves that, but obviously this is my first meeting, so no expert in adult entertainment, that's for sure.
On the rest of us. Okay, so I think we have agreement that we would bring that one to the public hearing and that ask Betsy to ask town council to advise us what is needed from the proposed into the more simple article
Right.
11.
Can I just bring one thing that we didn't talk about before, which we may or may not want to talk about pertaining to adult entertainment, because we say LCD, meaning the whole LCD. Would we want to pick one side of the LCD or the other? Maybe not open it up to the whole LCD.
Well, that would be a change of in section 4, right? That would be a where it's allowed. So I would say maybe in the future, but again, for kind of stick with what we had.
Which section would you put it in?
It's number, only one transfer station, I don't know.
So in terms, that's kind of a whole nother kind of,
I'm just surprised we did all the whole LCD. I don't know, we didn't, I guess, think too much about it, but.
Well, it's a zoning district.
Yeah,
Well, but we separate out things for like
Like,
what we did with
wow,
those
right,
daily.
right.
We could have an overlay district for adult entertainment.
Other towns do, yeah.
It's kind of curious to me. There's a lot of adult entertainment districts where communities make the call of putting it in like the commercial industrial districts. And when I worked in Winchester, they actually, I found it very amusing. They ended up putting it in a very prominent area right in the downtown. And guess what? They don't have any adult entertainment.
I don't think that is.
So people, communities handle it in very different ways.
I'm gonna let you stand up at town meeting and
No.
propose.
No, so what my, the takeaway here is
I
you
know.
just really, every community has a different way of dealing with adult uses. And, it could be in your industrial park, it could be in your downtown, it could be in a number of different locations. And everybody knows their town, so they know what would work and what wouldn't.
Well, I think it's my opinion that we don't want to go back and sort of muck with the, I guess you could put it as a section of this bylaw if you wanted to amend the table.
Oh, yeah, no,
Section
I mean, I
four,
just,
yeah.
just.
I think it's.
So,
Okay,
so Betsy, would you send town council the Bobrowski law with a reference to the state law? I think that's kind of what we were looking for, best protection, am I correct?
Yeah, I'd send the one that originally was drafted and
With a reference,
the administrative changes, which include the section on alternate members. And I would ask the question, should this be an appointed position, two appointed positions or two elected positions? That to me is the issue there. And then,
We haven't,
yeah, we're not getting, just.
we haven't, sort of, let's talk about whether we want to advance the administrative changes in it first, and then we can talk about the alternate, the language. So okay, so let's first talk about about people's feeling about the administrative changes, the section 12.
What do we hope is going to result? What's going to be the improvement or the mitigation of risk or?
There are some things that we don't have in our current about Dover amendment and some inclusionary,
Not inclusionary zoning.
no,
But we have a definition of the planning board, which is in our current.
which we don't have now.
Right.
And which we've survived, right, got this
And
far.
there's also,
Actually, I mean, we passed it, it's just not typed in the bylaws.
yeah,
And I think the Dover amendment stuff, which.
Dover
the
amendment,
schools have done.
and there's, what is it for, what is it called for handicapped people?
Handicapped accessibility is not specified in our current.
But that's state law, I mean, it's not the end of the
It's all-
world.
I mean,
But the rest of it is procedures on how to do a special permit and how to get a variance, and, it's kind of dry. I don't think it's controversial, it's just rewording what the current bylaw says to make it more.
Interesting.
Well, if we're looking out over the next, say, 3 town meetings, during which we're gonna bring some more meaty zoning, and we're also gonna be going through the 40A. Maybe it would make sense to pair section 12. If the board agrees, there's nothing terribly urgent coming out of this. Might make sense to pair that with some more meaty stuff on a different topic, but really focus on the zoning ones that we think are impactful and bring those this time. Just a thought.
An interesting thought. I don't have, when you make that case, I don't think it's pressing. So I guess
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it that way. I
There's
just figured
stuff
like,
in
let's
there,
get
but-
the administrative stuff done and then we can sort of say the administrative.
Right, but if we get the administrative stuff done and then we never get to the complicated stuff, and then all the complicated stuff comes to people at once.
Yeah.
It might be asking a lot.
Okay, I could be convinced on that.
Should we
Let's
go
put that,
maybe table
yeah,
it? for
so
a
table
moment,
that
and
one,
then
so that's maybe a
do the
agreement that to go with fall, that's a. You convinced me that it's 6 1/2 dozen of them.
Yeah,
Okay, the other one on
Clusters.
clusters.
So I think that should, rewording the whole thing should definitely be put off. Because it needs a lot of work, but there is something we could do, like with the ADU, which would be just to amend the existing one to make it more applicable in town. But it goes right against what Betsy was saying, so I don't know if this is worth.
Well, that's the thing is that that open space isn't the only benefit of the residential conservation cluster. There's the provision for some affordable units. To me, the one we put forward had two benefits. One is greater applicability on not necessarily just 5 lot minimum, but and you could no longer pay to play.
Yeah.
So that one is.
That's important.
Yeah, so that one, and particularly on the affordability piece, which we did
We already
add,
have that in our.
We have
preliminary.
it, it's there now.
but you can pay to play, right?
You can pay. like,
So we could, that piece we
And
could
is that
strike.
a different section, or that's only in the RCC section?
Only the, well, it's actually a separate section called inclusionary zoning,
The acreage required.
which we weren't gonna take out instantly. So the acreage required currently is 5, and it would make sense to reduce it. If we're gonna reduce it, you should reduce it to 1. And also there's a minimum number of lots you can create, which is 6. And that would make sense with a cluster to have it down to 3. I mean, 2 units doesn't make
So
any
you're
sense.
advocating doing that.
Well, I'm not sure whether it's worth the
No.
hassle, but
Laura?
Can I speak to this one for a moment? Because I think everybody knows this one's kind of near and dear to my heart. And so I'm gonna say, I think this is an important one. It has confused some listeners. I think that I would respectfully disagree with Betsy. I mean, that might be the experience of Drake-it, that they didn't get meaningful open space. I think if it's done well, that even small open spaces that are adjacent to trails or provide some public benefit that we as the planning board get to determine are still worthwhile. And the great benefit for me is that it's more environmentally responsible, smaller footprint zoning, and it gets at affordability. Having said all that, I think that, we don't know how the 40A process is gonna come out, but we do know that it is gonna have an opportunity to deal with affordability. Is gonna get us some different patterns of development if we go there. And there are still some things coming up that we won't get to take a bite of during that process, like senior housing, which is specifically excluded from the 40A. And so as much as I care deeply about residential conservation cluster, and I think that there are benefits to changing it, this might be one that comes later for me so that we can really just focus our efforts and take 1 or 2 that need a lot of discussion. I do think there's great environmental benefit and there's affordability benefits as well. Maybe the inclusionary zoning needs to be addressed sooner so that we strike the pay to play, but I'm not sure, maybe we all need to talk about that more.
What?
Connie Sullivan's ears are ringing. She was an old planning board.
Okay,
I remember that it was very much dear to her, so
okay.
yes. She did a lot of work on that. We didn't get very far.
So striking inclusionary zoning section was on our prior, like our future list. I was
it
looking
was on the future list, but it's not proposed.
Right, so we didn't put it on the list. Okay, what are people's sense of whether we advance residential conservation cluster to a public hearing? I mean, the other possibility, maybe this is just way too confusing. So we have I'm not gonna.
It's a lot for a public hearing,
I was gonna say we could have it outside of the public hearing, but then
Yeah.
it's too confusing.
How many we move forward so far?
So far we have adult entertainment.
Yeah.
And the mini ADU. Two so far.
We still got some meaty ones to
We
go.
still have a few others, and we've tabled pools, I think, and we've tabled floodplain. And we haven't resolved senior housing, and we haven't talked about family dwelling unit yet. And we have a proposal to table administrative changes for the fall. Can we get some resolution on the administrative changes? I think we were almost all in agreement on that one, but to put that on the fall, Laura's argument?
Unless we only have two. we might
Well,
wanna break
why don't we,
it forward if
so not,
we
we're
don't
right
have
this moment,
anything else.
suggest that we're gonna put that one to the fall.
Alright.
Well, we may come back to it. At the end of the meeting, okay. I would agree that residential conservation cluster, I'd like to see us put that off to the fall, I think. It's. But I would like to see it, it's kind of, to me, it's like we do senior housing or we do residential conservation cluster. Not both, this is my, and that senior housing has. It's not in the 3A. It's a need. And it's an opportunity in both the public hearing and then maybe in town meeting to get some good input on pretty much that single issue. If we look at it, the other things are small and
Separate senior housing. I mean, there's a commercial aspect and then there's actually true senior housing, and that's my concern with it.
Okay.
I mean, allowing commercial entities in every residential district. in
So
every location,
what are the commercial entities that are being allowed?
nursing home.
That's already allowed. They're already allowed in residential districts.
so we should,
I think it's just to be separated. There's two different, it's too much in one. I think.
Well, we're happy to separate it because nursing homes are allowed anyway, so we can out. Unless you're gonna propose not allowing nursing homes.
so let's, before we talk about the substance of the article, let's talk about whether we want to advance it to a public hearing, and then we can talk a little bit about if we want to modify the one. So, so can we just sort of stick to whether or not we want to advance it to the public hearing? So maybe take a little, what are people's feeling? Yes or no?
Just getting a style like.
So,
I'd like to.
yeah, how about,
What is yours? I have a little pen.
Yeah.
You know what? We have the same one.
all right, you got to figure it out. your hand. Okay, so I think we have started at least a majority of people who would like to see it move forward, and then we can we will come back to how we might want to improve. Betsy has some ideas, Christina has some ideas about how we can, so the substance of it. So I think I'm hearing that we're gonna advance senior housing to the public hearing. Okay, I agreement. And then the only other one on this list is, and then I'm hearing that we have agreement. Does anybody disagree with putting residential conservation cluster to the fall?
I agree with that, but then if the fall things get bumped, like if the floodplain gets bumped or now if there's too much on the fall, so I think if we're bumping things, we should have a plan in place already.
Yeah, you make a good point. It may not be fall, it might be subsequent.
And I feel like we're already gave ourselves a tight time frame. We should have started the week after fall town meeting doing this. I think we need to start much sooner.
Can't clock back.
No, but if we're doing this, we need to start and maybe not take a break in the summer and get through this and not take a break. We need to.
Laura.
Well, I was thinking the same way that Mary was thinking, that fall could be a maybe, but again, we'll need to do the same process with fall, right? To kind of prioritize. And so all of these, they're either going on the spring meeting or they're going in the parking lot. Right. And then we're gonna have to revisit. And for each one of these, summer happens, life happens, we're all working hard, but if we can, now that we're maybe developing a work plan to focus our energies, then whichever one of these or two we bring forward, senior housing and one more, whatever it might be, we can start to develop some communication tools around showing what it looks like, making some visuals, helping people understand it, and really telling a story that educates.
We need to do a better job.
Educates people. And so, stepwise, one or two at a time is maybe not such a bad thing.
Right.
It's gonna take longer, but.
Well, I think also Betsy's,
Yeah.
it seems like she's very skilled at zoning
Yes.
and communications about that,
Yes.
so that's good. So.
And
Okay, if you have your hand up.
I do have a question. when was the last time residential conservation cluster bylaw was used?
It was used in Surfside.
Surfside,
Surf Village was 3 years ago, 4 years.
No, more than that.
the last
what
one
about-
up there up by Magnolia, right?
Yeah.
That one,
Oh,
and then
Uh,
there was one in town off of
So
Mill
that's what it was,
Street.
'cause she was the first.
Wait, where was the one in town off of what street?
Mill Street, it was the old towing.
Mill Street.
Oh, okay.
Across from the bike shop, then there was one, Summer Wind or something out by, Summer what?
Summer Hill.
Summer Hill.
The old,
So within the last couple of years.
Yeah,
Yeah, within 5 years, yes.
there's four of them.
6 years.
Recently. Relatively recently.
I think there's one off of Lincoln or Pleasant. That, just as you turn in there, that,
So relatively recently,
Okay.
probably more recently than the subdivision control law was used.
Right, but a lot of the zoning bylaw and a lot of other documents reference the subdivision rules and regs. So, and the subdivision rules and regs don't include anything like low impact development or floodplain, any references of floodplain, stormwater, MS4. So at some point when the dust settles a little, we'll revamp those so that
Yeah.
they're up to date.
Strengthening those would be. I'm actually always surprised that we don't have small 2 or 3 lot subdivisions all the time.
Yes,
Yeah,
they're called
I-
A&Rs.
Yeah.
Well, but when the A&Rs are on steep slopes or things, so.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, but that's not on the, okay, so, all right, so I think we've decided on residential conservation cluster to go to the parking lot.
Mhm.
And then, the only other one on the list here is the adding a family dwelling unit. Adding the word, family living quarters, with employee living quarters. To what? So this is this was the Article 16 to amend table 4.2 allowed uses of the zoning, section E, number 7, and note 13 by inserting or family member after employee. So it's living quarters for an employee in a carriage house or an accessory building. And we proposed to, in that last article, to just add family living quarters or employee living quarters.
And the reason we're doing that is because Sarah Mellish says a lot of people come in and say they're hiring their mother. She's the employee and they're putting her in.
so it's a workaround.
Yeah,
Again, is it gonna get us to a meaningful outcome? They're already getting through special permit for the ZBA review
It
and
just cleans it up.
it cleans it up, but maybe it gets pushed till the cleanup that happens
well,
later.
maybe, but on the other hand, it might be a 10-minute discussion.
Well, it might be, but I'm just, I'm concerned that, I don't want anything to come to, that's a distraction. And if it doesn't result in a different outcome, then people can go on calling their grandmothers their boys for a little longer, maybe. I mean, I don't mean to dismiss it, but I agree with you, Sarah, that we want to be successful. I think feel like we're all working together here and we're trying to get to consensus about what's meaningful. And as much as I'd like to help the zoning board and clean things up, let's focus on.
But the same issue will come up at the next meeting, that, we
Will.
don't want to push this again, and so, I don't know, we keep pushing.
So the other thing is we could bring it to public hearing and see if there are people, it becomes controversial.
But you might hear it at a public hearing and then you might have a different
That's
audience
true.
at town meeting, and who knows what's gonna be controversial.
But if we hear it's controversial at the public hearing, we'll know.
We could bring it and drop it,
Yeah, do we drop
we
it?
could just bring it.
With all these things, we're just not setting ourselves up for success, right? We're just, if we're gonna have the conversation.
It seems like a no-brainer, but I don't know. You're right, the public could be. Well, if we do a good job of presentation and meeting.
So I guess I feel like, the. When you have senior housing, the, what do we call it, the mini ADU changes, Article 15. This, family dwelling unit. That actually, with the senior housing, that's kind of a lot of meaty things, and I still want, like, I kind of would. Maybe to Laura's point, if we had, like to see us get those administrative changes done. That section 12, even though I've been waffling around on that, I just feel like if we get that administrative changes done, it kind of modernizes our bylaw from the front to the back. With, it kind of incorporates Mr. Bobrowski's changes that are administrative, and so to sort of, to Laura's point, trade off the family living quarters for the administrative changes. But we could just think a little bit about it to the earlier strategy and put it, to Chris's point, put it on the public hearing and then see how large the warrant is for spring. Because sometimes the town meeting warrant isn't.
Following along Laura's points, that I think we need to be a little more organized and streamlined and present well to residents and the public, rather than saying, you know, I get the idea, but we're kind of saying, let's throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. So I would like to be a little more organized and come to a public hearing with clear bylaws that we will be then moving on to spring meeting. You know, to have a public hearing with 4 and only then go with 2 or 3 kind of seems that we really don't know what we're doing. In my opinion.
So right now we've agreed on adult entertainment, the mini ADU and the senior housing to bring forward. And I think
We still have.
the only 2 left, we didn't actually put on, we did not put non-conforming on. Just Laura's asking about the non-conforming use issue, and we didn't put it on the work plan at the last 2 meetings.
So that's in the parking lot.
Where that's in the parking lot. I suggest that we actually sit down with town council and ZBA and hammer and better understand the issues. So that's.
Well, if that was
that's
on the
another
list
day.
tonight, I was gonna just simply say. let's
Yeah, I
take
think
that.
Yeah, I think everybody's in agreement on that one.
So is that it? Have we
Yeah,
gone
that's
through
it.
them all?
That's the list. So there is one other issue, and that is an issue Mary raised, which is typos and Scribner's articles. And Betsy, can you speak to those issues?
Well, the town clerk has the ability to correct Scribner's errors and typos and things like that. So I don't think that, obviously, what goes on the town meeting warrant should be as accurate as possible. Occasionally there's an oops, and so the town clerk has the ability, if it's clearly a typo, she has the ability to correct it
In the existing bylaw.
in the existing bylaw.
Okay, so we do have a list of those. Why don't I get that list to you and you check with her to make sure that the scope of that list is within her jurisdiction, and as we find others, to make sure that that's the case. And then I know there were a couple typos in that section 12.
Is there a process?
Um,
Is there a
Okay.
process for that?
Is there a formal process for correcting those errors?
I don't know. I do not know the answer to that question. She and I had a discussion when there was some question about whether the bylaw that was online was the updated bylaw. And this was actually right after both she and I had ankle surgery or knee surgery. I ended up looking at it and determined that all of the changes that had been adopted at what was it, the 2021 town meeting had not been included, and basically went through and corrected it and sent it to her. And so she and I will have a protocol that after the Attorney General returns the response for the town meeting articles, that she will do the changes, and then I will double check her. So that's how it stands right now in terms of spelling and typos and things like that. I'm assuming that she would use a spell check, or, you know, would go through with a fine tooth comb and make sure everything is spelled properly. And if she misses something, I hopefully will get it.
I think to correct, just to clarify, because Christina was looking perplexed, I believe it was the changes around the LCD that were, there was one, there were changes in section 5 and in section 6, and the ones in section 6 did not get on the town's website. It was, but subsequently we replaced section 6.
Right, so can we just be CC'd on this? Right,
Pardon?
so could we be CC'd, please? On the changes?
I can't hear you.
So I think Christina is asking for a, for the board to be updated on that process when it happens.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question that, ask Betsy, so is it just limited to typos and, well, I guess typos would just be misspelling. So is it just misspelling?
Numbering is one issue.
Numbering?
Grammar.
Referencing, how about referencing?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I was like, what
I
is the
just-
procedure?
Well, I mean, the goal here is, with all the changes going on, that the bylaw gets scrubbed for proper references. And so if you've got, you know, a number of changes going into the bylaw, you are going to have to, it's going to have to be checked to make sure all the references are the actual references to the appropriate sections.
Yes.
So I don't think she has the ability to do that. I will double check with legal counsel and through Greg, and to see if she has the ability to do that. But most of the time it should be the planning board and the planner that are doing that.
Yeah, my question was more kind of, you know, what's the threshold? Is it just renumbering and misspelling, or is it added text that could be taken out? Or is it, you know, what's the threshold of changes that can occur without a vote or the planning board knowing?
I will have Greg talk with legal counsel about it. My understanding is that it was typos, and pretty much just typos, and maybe a little grammar changes, but other than that, that was it.
I think there was some numbering where it's like, you know, 12.1.12 instead of 12.1.1. That kind of thing seems like a typo, but I do think that there are sometimes errors. There was one at I can't remember what the topic was, where we had a bulleted list of things, and one of the last one should have been instead of a subheading, should have been a subheading, and that is a different content. So that seems to me to be, in that particular case, it changed the meaning, so we did fix it, but, you know,
Right.
if it's a
Intent
meaning.
is- It shouldn't change the meaning to keep the
Right.
same intent.
Right.
Sometimes there's a missing word from, or, you know,
Right.
we have to be careful
Okay,
not to add.
so I think that to the larger point, in terms of what we're gonna put on the warrant for spring, we are not going to try to take up those typos. I'll resend you that list tonight, Betsy, to make sure that none of them are we can just quickly look through it, maybe at the end of this meeting. I have the list that Mary put together, and make sure that none of them are substantive, and warrant being on the warrant.
Could I just clarify too, that was a list from our current
Existing
bylaws? Yeah, I never got an updated bylaw.
Right, but at least we start with that. Okay. Okay, so we still have not fully resolved the family dwelling unit, what family living quarters for adding the family for employee.
This is the word, I mean,
To bring it
To
to,
bring it to the spring and
Read upon here.
so I mean, my question would be to Betsy's question, you know, I mean, basically a family just, if you say family, you basically say anybody, right? Because somebody could declare anybody as a family. So it becomes a rental unit and we just have to be clear that that's the direction it's going.
It could be an employee too, it could be an employee.
Right,
right.
but that's what I'm saying.
Be an employee.
So it's just, so it's an accessory, it's a detached accessory dwelling unit.
Potentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why don't we try to be as transparent as possible and say then, you know, then that gets looped under the accessory dwelling unit bylaw. Why would we have a separate one that you could say it's detached, it's my family, and I don't know that it has the same requirements as,
It does not.
so I'm not sure what we're doing.
So it's in section 4, and it's an allowed use by special permit is the detached without any, you're right, without any of the other oversight. Provisions of the accessory dwelling unit, and it's my hypothesis. Without not full knowledge that is what is happening, we're calling accessory dwelling units
I think
rather
it's
than the
once.
ADUs.
So, I mean, I think we're creating this conversation for one instance. I mean,
But I think,
And I can
and
name 2 people, so.
in the last like 5 years though,
At least 2.
so I mean, I think we can agree that we don't really want, you know, here's the accessory dwelling unit bylaw that you can do whatever you want and it's detached, and here's one that you have to go through all these hoops. Everybody's just gonna say, oh, my family member's moving in, so I don't really see the benefit in that one.
so you're saying that we should just rethink all of ADUs and put them all, repackage it. Put it in the parking lot and repackage.
Well,
both?
yeah, and I don't necessarily think we have time before the spring, but I'm saying, you know, that if we're gonna, why would we tweak the current accessory dwelling unit and then also tweak that one that is vastly different, but then opens it up to be an accessory dwelling unit?
Well, it already exists, so.
That would exist.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, the original intent of that bylaw was, you know, employee carriage house, you know, all that
Right.
kind of stuff. So, you know, it's an old bylaw, so I think either we get
Scratch
rid of
all
it, bring it
together.
up to date, merge it with the ADU, whatever it is, but I don't really
tough
think,
sell,
What?
tough sell to the public,
Well,
change that.
I don't know. I guess I tend to agree with my original understanding when I first started diving into this is that was the accessory dwelling unit, like that they were one and the same, but they are not. That is employee housing, employee housing. And then accessory dwelling unit is something different. And I think that we're seeing it. I think Sarah Melish would say that they're seeing more of the employee housing section 4 allowed by special permit detached units than the actual
Actually,
ADU.
I'm coming along to Laura's point of view, we're not gonna really change the
Yeah.
outcome.
Yeah,
much.
so maybe just
So maybe we just.
table it.
Yeah, table
Yeah.
it.
All right, I'm okay with that.
So in regard to accessory dwelling units, I've asked, so there was language in the full draft about if there was an existing accessory dwelling unit, then they had, I think, 2 years to apply for a special permit.
No, for a it was a
For a
certificate.
certificate, to apply for a certificate.
Right. So I've asked the assessor how many accessory dwelling units there are. And
You know,
Question, Betsy, it's a good question.
We have to go door to door with a policeman to get that answer. That's what
We think they're probably around.
I've never worked in a town that hasn't tracked that.
you know.
So I think what we do also, I mean, I know of 5, at least, cases where people have added onto their homes and have a family member or someone living there and have a sink and maybe a fridge, but it's not an actual accessory unit. It's just some rooms in the back of the house or the front of the house or the upstairs of the house or whatever. And I guess that's why I'd like to see us have an accessory dwelling unit bylaw that is less restrictive, but creates, because those things are happening, create safer units with some oversight, which I did like in the proposal, so that a hot plate on a counter isn't somebody's stove, and that we're reflecting when 2 families or even 3 families are sharing what is not, that we have an
Can we talk
oversight.
about like the amnesty period and like maybe talk about that first and actually get a handle on what we have? And maybe research getting everyone that does have an ADU in compliance, registered, find out how many we have. So we do have a starting point versus just starting from scratch and not knowing. So
I think we could use the census.
I'm actually working on that
like
through
an
the,
amnesty or open enrollment, or I mean, whatever you want to call it, to get people to register, get them legal. And then we have a handle on how many we have,
I will be.
because they're gonna be illegal once we pass this.
But they're not illegal if they exist already. There's nothing that makes an existing.
If there's 2 units in a single family district, if it wasn't applied for on some kind of a permit.
Well, it gets tricky with it. What is it that makes it, you can have a sink, certainly. Put a sink in any room in your house, that's okay. You can put a fridge anywhere in your house, that's okay.
Oh, absolutely,
You
but
put a
then,
hot plate in, that's okay.
but that doesn't make a dwelling unit,
Well, what does? What is it that makes a dwelling
a
unit?
stove.
A stove.
I think that is,
So if I bought a stove and put it in my house,
that's like a
We've
stove.
gone through this, Chris.
I know, but I just wonder,
So I would
there's
say,
nothing that stops me from doing that. I like stoves.
But it's not zoned, Chris. The point is, there's single family zoning, right? So if you're adding an ADU, you're changing zoning. So if we put this out there and say everyone who has an ADU, whether it was before or after, we've never kept track, say, shame on us. We would like to know where we're starting from. And then we have a number to go forward. What if like 25% of the town has an ADU? I don't know, like, I mean, we may not want to entertain that if really we have that many. Do we want our whole town to be that many? I mean, we have to look where these ADUs are, then where's the congestion? Is there overflow of parking on the streets in certain neighborhoods? I mean, I think there's data, real data that could be useful.
How do we gather? I'm not sure how we interpret the data, but we can agree that, that it would be interesting, but what source do we use to get it? Like where would we get ADU data? I think legally ADUs in the recent past would have had a special permit by the ZBA. So the ZBA minutes may be a source of recent ADUs, and that's the only thing I could think of.
so you can get a list from the assessor's office, and then it's kind of a very rough estimate, right? Because they don't designate ADUs, they'll do like, 2-family, multifamily, this, that. So I think to Christine's point, I mean, I always like data, so it's like, well, trying to get established, how many do we have? How many do we want to have, right? And where they are and the pluses and the minuses and all that. But what I also have not seen in the 2 years we've been discussing this is the town taking it upon themselves through the assessor's office, the building department, somewhere saying, now we're going to start tracking them, right? So we've sat around for 2 years saying we have no idea how many ADUs we have. And some have been permitted, but the process in town hasn't changed. So I think that's a first step, that the town process changes, that we have a designation of ADU somewhere. And I'm happy to, you know, I don't know if it has to be through the assessor's office, the building inspector. I'm just surprised it hasn't been picked up and dealt with.
I think a lot of them date back. a long time.
Yeah.
Oh, and the old ones are gonna be hard, but you know, when things have been permitted, you know, 6 months ago, and it's then, you know, put up on the assessor's site and it says multifamily.
The reason that they aren't is because they're really not allowed, because everyone has to have a double lot on a house built before 1984. And that's just not very many houses in this town, so you're not gonna get it.
Well, I saw there's been ones permitted through the ZBA.
It can't be permitted.
I mean,
They're
there's
not
one on my
allowed.
street permitted last year.
No, they're permitted through different mechanisms, but not through the accessory dwelling unit.
Yes, it was.
And then they have a double lot.
They do.
Well, then that's fine. Not that many.
Tracks.
Not that many people. So you track one because there's one. That's not the 50 that are out there.
So can I just stop us for a minute? Because the topic of this meeting today was what are we gonna bring to the public hearing? And I think we have actually agreed that we're not gonna bring ADUs
Yeah, these were
for this public hearing. So we did agree on that. So let me go through the list
So
of,
we agree on the mini and the maxi? We're
so
tabling
I'm
both?
gonna go through the
Okay.
list of things that we are
Okay.
definitely bringing to the public hearing, which is adult entertainment. The mini accessory dwelling unit bylaw, which is was previously Article 15. And senior housing. And I'm still pushing for administrative changes just because I want to tidy things up. That's my but we have not agreed on the latter. The last one, and that we've agreed that we're gonna table, that we're going to table. I think we've sort of, the family dwelling unit it's not an accessory dwelling unit, it's a family living quarters in a outbuilding. Amending the floodplain bylaw, amending residential conservation cluster, swimming pools, and non-conforming uses. So, advanced adult entertainment, the mini ADU, and senior housing is what we've agreed. And I'd really like to add in the administrative stuff just to tidy that up.
So we have an administrative section up
Now,
already, right?
mhm,
And this is a significant update to it.
yeah, but I don't
We don't have
think,
a
I
town-
also would like
Yeah.
to speak to the idea of the alternates. We haven't talked about that.
Right.
The alternates for special permits. Now, we could just make that minor change to the existing, that would be one option, except the planning
Except
board.
we don't have an exist, yeah.
Well, we could add a planning board section.
Right.
To me, it's not controversial, we haven't heard, I don't think we've heard anybody complain about that.
Well, we haven't discussed it.
No, about the administrative section. And my rationale for having alternates is we have a big special permit site plan review coming up. If one of us is ill or can't attend, knows we're traveling or something and can't attend a bunch of the meetings, so, you know, it's the example of where, you know, everybody kind of needs to attend these things, so, yeah.
So that's one minor change potentially to this general.
Mhm.
Are there also though more detail about if we're about to go in a special permit that includes site plan review, are there things in that proposal that are important to get in place before we go through the special permit and site plan review? In which case, maybe
Yeah,
Yes,
actually,
there
there's
are.
a list of criteria that have to be met in approving. the
some of
special
those are
permit.
new, right?
Yeah,
Well, they're reworded and made more clear.
yeah, setbacks requirement.
Maybe it is more.
So maybe we just
Meaningful.
take a look at the administrative section and do our homework and come back with thoughts and put it on the public
Put it on the
hearing.
public
Hearing and, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
I am not, and at this point, you might have to convince me otherwise, I'm not in favor of the alternates. I feel like we've come this far. We have Zoom, you can still participate if you are traveling. We know this is coming up. Does anyone know that they have a known conflict?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to look at the future.
No, with cell signaling. I mean, I think that's what, I mean, I don't. I think-
That's an example.
No, but I'm just saying changing our current makeup.
Well,
We have an issue with this, burn dump. Where there's only 5 of us that are participating in it.
Oh, right.
with
Can
one
I
person has
ask
to
you why?
recuse.
It's just the threshold of how many people have to vote. I mean, you still
All
have enough
5 of
people to
us have
vote.
to vote. on this.
Let's be unanimous.
It has to be 5 out of the 7, and
But
because
that's
we're a
not-
7-member
Must be a
board.
That's
super
not the same
majority.
as that cell signaling.
I think I think it's a special permit in general, whether it's cell signaling or something else, something 2 years from now, 4 years from now. It puts a,
At least we have the out. I mean, you know,
That's right.
we'll probably never use this. I don't think, but at least it's there if there's.
One thing I say, if you're gonna do it, I don't think it should be elected, because who's gonna run for a position?
Right.
You're the
no,
elected
it's-
position.
right.
That's my opinion.
And I beg to differ with appointed from the select board. I
Yeah.
feel like we are an elected board if we're gonna.
Why don't we appoint them ourselves?
I would be okay with that,
Yeah.
but I'm still not convinced that we need it.
Once.
Yeah, I have no problem with us appointing
Yeah,
them.
we could do it.
Laura,
There's a risk to the town, I think, if we get into these deep in the process, something happens, you
Yeah.
know, life happens to someone and they have to step off, and then we don't have enough people, so I think, just like you have alternate jurors, you have to sit there and hear the whole thing, and they don't get to vote. It would make sense in some of these high
seems
stakes.
to me it's in fairness.
And the longer, you know, the longer they play out as well, the more
Right.
likelihood that something's gonna come up that somebody can't fulfill their.
I mean, I just know it was a
Role.
huge, it can be public projects. When the high school was going forward, I mean, that thing went on for weeks and months, the special permit, and somebody didn't participate. It was,
What was the size of that board?
it was a 7-member board, but it was the same thing. It just, the duration, when you have a large special permit, the duration is longer, which means the likelihood that some one or 2 people miss, if you miss 2 hearings, you
And
can't.
we have Zoom now, like, that's my point. You can participate via Zoom.
Yeah, but if you're really sick or you have a personal issue, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I never thought about it before this conversation really, but I think it's an excellent idea. For all the reasons we're saying about just having some more redundancy to benefit the town. I also think maybe there's a side benefit of kind of grooming the next people in. You get to try it out. You sit on the planning board as an alternate and you see how much you love it and you can't live without it. And the next cycle, maybe you want to.
Well, another example is that, I was talking to somebody who is an engineer, so. He would be very good at reviewing
Specialist, yeah.
plans, and helping us to think about, into a ten, so.
Becky, you have a comment?
I do. I just wanted to point out, Christina's mentioning Zoom. We are, you are able to use Zoom, and this, we just got clarified today. Starting in April, though, you do have to have in-person quorum, and whomever is chairing the meeting must be in person. So if you're allowing some people to attend a meeting via Zoom, you must have quorum in person, as opposed to, say, 4 out on Zoom and 3 in a meeting. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's bring it to the public hearing and have people discuss it, and here, I think that's the purpose of tonight, is to see. if-
So in my experience with planning boards, it was usually a 5-member board, and it was either appointed or elected. And every board, pretty much every board I've worked with has had 2 alternates. And they have been, as Laura says, they have been getting experience so that they've either filed to be elected when a member decided that they didn't want to continue on in a planning board elected position. It was very helpful. And I can think in both Winchester and Drake, a handful of times where it was really critical, because otherwise we would have had to have closed the public hearing, or the owner basically withdrew without prejudice. A new member came on board and we started the process over again.
Yeah.
So it's very handy to have alternate members.
I served on the ZBA for a year as an alternate before I got on Wellesley. Or maybe I was just on for the year. Anyways, I was an alternate for a year in the ZBA. So I think they're doing it.
Just following.
So my comments on this is, you know, I'm fine with bringing it to, public forum. I think it's open for discussion. If it's 1, 2, 3, 4, I think you can have up to 5. But I also didn't see in here that I think we want the terms, if it were to go forward, that they would need to be staggered for the alternate. So I don't know, like you can't have 2 3-year terms.
Concurrent. Concurrent.
Yeah.
So
I-
it would have to be staggered, like one, if it were to come, you know, one person is for 1 year and one is 3 and that, or whatever.
Right, right.
And now,
Has to
can we,
write this, I mean, someone will have to write this up in the next week or 2. That's it.
and then, can they be appointed by the planning board? Is there any reason that they can't be?
I don't know the answer to that. I will find out. I don't think of. The appointments were usually by the town manager or the board of selectmen in all instances that I have experienced, but I can find out.
Yeah, but yeah, I saw there were some towns that were appointed by the planning board. I can forward those to you if you want.
That a planning board alternate was, or the zoning board alternate was appointed by the
The
zoning
planning
board.
board alternates were appointed by the planning board.
Okay.
Does the ZBA currently have alternates?
I don't know.
Was it in
They did.
Manchester?
Yes, yeah, the CBA I served as an alternate.
So,
So this
is that in section 12?
Because
Because
they're appointed by, they're all appointed by.
They're all
the board.
appointed by the select.
I know, but we define the ZBA in here.
You mean there's language already there?
Ron, I can clarify that.
Go
It's
ahead.
Gail. I work for the ZBA. There are 5 members of the board and 2 alternates.
And how are they chosen?
Oh, right here.
I believe they are appointed by the select board.
So the
Wow.
proposed section 12 is ZBA, 5 members and 2 associate members appointed by the select board for 3-year terms. The regular members shall be appointed such that the term of the last 1 member expires each year, so we can just use the same language. Vacancies shall be filled in the same manner. The ZBA shall elect one of its members as chairman and its members as clerk and serve for 1-year terms. The 2 associate members shall be appointed such that their 2 terms do not expire the same year. So we could just add that same language to the proposed associate members or alternate members.
Mhm.
Laura?
Perhaps we might consider associate or alternate members as a 1-year term.
Yeah.
So they can try it out and
We
we're
can
more
try them
likely
out.
to get, we can try them out and they're more likely to get, you know, you're more likely to make a commitment as an
Yeah.
alternate for a year.
Sounds like a plan.
Unless the special permit goes over a year.
Well, then you can reappoint the person. The planning board decides that the alternate is, you're saying the risk to the planning board if the person decides to step down. I guess that's always the risk.
So they
It's
go
just-
longer.
Yeah, yeah.
Or starts in the midterm of it and goes beyond.
Well, maybe you appoint
Well, they can
the
also,
alternates and you stagger them by 6 months or something.
they can
I don't know.
resign too, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so just to finish out this agenda, is there any other, well, I think what we've agreed is that we will post the public hearing for February 27th. And we will take up adult entertainment, the prior Article 15, which is ADU mini, senior housing, which Chris and Betsy will make some changes, and I would suggest maybe bring a draft to our regular meeting on February 13th.
Sure.
And we got a lot.
Well, I want to discuss when you
Okay.
finish. I
Can we post it on the SharePoint and everybody can see it?
Yeah.
think we can in February
Yeah, and then we can even take 10 minutes to summarize it,
on the 13th.
13th, maybe.
Well, I want to discuss the
Okay.
13th.
So then what about administrative changes? Did we agree that we're gonna put that on the public hearing? That to me seems like if the select board wants us to bring it down to 3 instead of 4, we could drop that one.
Sure.
Okay. All right, Betsy, you've drafted the public hearing language. Can you amend it to you and Gail tomorrow? Get that.
Yeah.
to the cricket? Great, thank you very much. A pleasure.
Are we done with that? We done?
You're done.
I think that's it.
Okay, so. So I polled everyone for this presentation by cell signaling. It looks like the date is the 13th during our meeting. So they want 2 hours of our attention. And I'm kind of scheduling it right after the public hearing to finish up the burn dump. Now, we have some other business, and I'll ask Betsy, anything on the MAPC? Are they postponed now for this parking?
We still need to have a discussion about planning board feedback on that presentation that was made in December. If we did not want to take up time on that agenda, what we could do is each member could provide their comments to me, and then I could forward those comments to MAPC, and we're trying to reschedule for March.
Comfortable with that, everyone?
I was not at that meeting, so I don't know what the presentation was.
Watch it on Zoom.
Could you get Mary the presentation or?
It's on the
It's on SharePoint.
SharePoint for that meeting.
It was the December 9th meeting, I think it was.
And Sue could look at it.
Yeah, I will.
It's on hi, it's Gail. It's on SharePoint and it's recorded.
Thank you. And did they post the data?
They did not post the data. And the reason I think for that is they're supposed experts in it, and I can try to get the data, but they've already processed the data, so I'm not quite sure why you need the data.
I think there was a presentation to the DIP group also, which might be more compact. With some data.
Study, but we're not get the data. I don't think it makes much sense, Betsy.
Well, that could be one of the comments. So I didn't want to get into a protracted, we could just send the comments. I'm trying to.
So yeah, just send me email comments and I'll try to get the data and anything else that you feel you need.
And I guess the survey is the DIP survey. I mean, I was part of that and haven't seen any of the results.
Yeah, I can probably get you that. Some of the
Let's
DIP
get
data.
everybody, let's put that on SharePoint if you have it.
Yeah, I can do that, I think.
Okay, thank you on that. And then on the Board of Health comments, I kind of refreshed my memory. Where do we stand on that? You had distilled them.
I was asked to distill them further.
Have you done that?
I'm not quite finished.
So would that be ready for the 13th?
You were going to review it and then send it. It was not going to be re-reviewed.
Okay, so we don't have to put it on the agenda. Okay. So I was thinking of starting the meeting at 6. That would give us an hour of regular business and a half hour for the public hearing. And then the 2 hours for, which is mostly, I think their presentation is 45 minutes. And then they're giving us a big chunk for questions.
What is the outcome
This is
that they want? I mean, my concern, so just my concern is that any advice that we give them is sort of advisory, and if it's binding, we should vote it. So,
Well, they want, this is what they want to do. This is preliminary. They're gonna have their experts there, their engineers and what have you for us to ask questions. And then they're gonna produce final plans in April, which I assume we will have another bite at the apple.
So is it the public hearing that they're? not-
No, it's just a private presentation to us, which the public's welcome to attend.
will we take public comment?
I might, I would, I'll see how it goes. I mean, if we have a lot of questions. I mean, it's basically, wanna kind of get our questions asked, Betsy's questions,
And they are
and then
subject to
push-
special permit and site plan review.
that would be the next. Yeah,
They,
So it's not, it's a step process.
So when you said bite at the apple, I mean, and we're talking about town meeting and passing the administrative, doesn't sound like. Do they want their special permit to be approved by April?
No.
Okay, I'm like, yeah, and that's what I was like.
Say final
process
plan,
here.
final
Okay,
plans,
okay.
they wanna get
I'm
their
like,
act
bite at the
together.
apple. I mean, wow, they think they're gonna get through that really quickly.
So if we advertise the zoning change, well, are there any zoning changes that might impact this project?
we
No,
already did that.
The LCD?
No,
Yeah.
no.
okay.
Also put senior housing
Adult entertainment.
Yeah, all right. Change of the back.
Go crazy. Orange Julius.
back.
Okay, so I think I've got it. Is there an issue with starting at 6 o'clock?
So can you bring in pizzas?
Well, that was the other thing. I wanted to talk a little bit about the 40A, what the select board has in mind for this task force. I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I want to talk a little bit, if we have time, on the which is not, I told, I don't think that's gonna happen until we're done with our business here. I don't think, put it off till at least March. I think we have issues with, I wanna get some
Got
more
other
input
things
on the
we-
retreat
yeah.
from everyone here. I want to vet that a little better than Mary Foley.
Would we just not lose sight? We have to do curb cut regulations to the DPW as well.
That too, but I can't do that on the 13th. That's another thing I gotta put, that's another thing we gotta do.
So can I suggest that on that curb cut regulations, we have the prior regulations and then we have the intent. And then we have the material that was already written. Can somebody just kind of put that all together in an application that says, do you meet the following things that we can then?
I think we've done that.
Yeah, but we need to put it together and put it on a meet on SharePoint so we can talk about it. It seems to me like the issues are pretty,
Is it something that Betsy could draft? Is it-
yeah, I mean, if somebody can get all the
Mary,
pieces.
do you have a draft of regulations?
I did a draft like 3 years ago, so
Yes,
it's
Okay, so
outdated.
let's get it.
Start with that.
It is out there. No, it was given, but that was for a different purpose and a different time. So that wasn't geared towards passing it over to the DPW.
But let's,
That was for the planning board review process.
Got it, but it should be pretty much the same. The names have changed to protect the innocent. But could you,
I'll work with you on that. I mean, Mary, maybe the two of us. can do it.
It's April.
I might not be the best because I'm not for moving this to the DPW, so.
But you are for having oversight of a DPW and being,
Special
prescriptive.
permit.
so I think that we were charged, we said, well, we would write regulations, so let's write regulations. Let's work on it together.
I think it's an April timeframe, because I want to get through the stuff for town meeting in March. Want to make sure we've got the public hearing going, we got to incorporate some stuff, so I'm thinking April.
Yeah, March.
Curb cut
May I ask another process question?
process away.
Of when we would get the approved zoning bylaws back from the state?
Early February is what I heard, and maybe
February 23rd, I believe.
is the end of the town clerk.
So basically, the ink is not going to dry, and then we do another.
We're-
keep the ink wet,
We're actually.
keep the ink wet.
Yeah, we spend a lot of. Okay, That's what I had. I think I'm clear on what I wanted, what we want to do for the 13th. So, you know, bring popcorn or whatever.
Okay,
What, should we take a hold off the other dates we were, the separate meeting dates? we were-
Yeah, I think the meetings are the next meetings are the 13th and the 27th. We had a hold for zoning, right?
We had a hold for CST. Well, I was holding some.
Oh,
No,
holds.
it's gonna be the 13th.
Okay.
It's just gonna be a long night.
Oh, so when are we talking about like the revised senior housing bylaw and
You gotta get some people responsible.
adult
and
entertainment?
Graphics out.
Maybe we need to have a working session on the senior housing. Just a, you know,
Yeah,
okay,
how about the Monday between the 13th and the 27th? Or the Monday between now and the 13th, whatever that is. Be the 6th, that's next week.
That's a holiday,
February 6th?
President's Day.
Oh, the
Twentieth.
6th,
20th.
That's the
20th.
20th.
The 20th is President's Day.
How about next Monday? Is that
that'd be
too
okay.
soon, Betsy?
Might be too soon.
What was the question?
Betsy, can we get some language on senior housing by the 6th?
I'll see what I can do.
I'm available all week, so.
Okay.
Gail, is there any issue with starting at 6 p.m.?
6 a.m.
The
It is
13th?
gonna be a long meeting.
None that I'm aware of, Ron.
Okay, thanks.
Bring dinner.
So they want the big room. They have a lot of people coming from what he says. This is Glovsky and
can we have the, on the public hearing? I would really like to make sure the public is invited, and if we need to have it at the high school or somewhere else, like,
the
I don't wanna-
problem is broadcasting it. We could.
I mean, if we're comfortable having it in that room, but I don't think at this point we should be excluding the public.
Talk about a new venue on that. The high school might be problematic, but the community center might be a possibility. Except, no, that wouldn't be a possibility. The problem is this TV broadcast.
I mean, I think that room is fine. I think we don't need to exclude the public, right?
So you can say the public is welcome to attend in person or by Zoom. I think that's fine.
Right, and it'll goes out to the town through the TV.
We did the TV broadcast at town meeting, so they should be able to do it over there.
I mean, I don't know how many people are
I
gonna.
think it's expensive.
I don't know, with the stuff we're doing, I don't know if it's gonna be a big,
And I think this room is fine. I just want to make sure that we invite the public. That's all.
Sure, oh, yeah.
I just feel like the boards are not really consistent with this. The ZBA says, you know, everyone except for the applicant is,
We should get an article in the Cricket about it.
Yeah.
I'll talk to Erica.
Let's do a short. article.
they also have the ability
Maybe
to,
Betsy can,
That's you can do it, yeah.
short article.
which we've done before. Okay.
Okay.
Laura?
On the CST, will we see any materials, plans, et cetera,
Ahead of time?
beforehand, or are they just gonna give us a live?
Oh, I can
Easier to
ask-
get, it's easier to get your
ask 'em.
questions ready when you get a little preview.
Yeah, okay. I'll ask about that.
Okay,
I'll confirm with him tomorrow that that's the date and. Preview.
So on the 6th, will we meet here?
oh, did we confirm that?
What's 6?
Oh, the 6th
Is
is
that
a
the
working
working
session on the
session
senior
for
housing. You
senior
don't have to
housing?
come.
I don't have.
Well, and you won't
I'll
be
probably-
around soon, right? You won't be.
She'll be on the
Or will
6th.
you be here?
I
You're
will
leaving,
not
right?
be able to even participate via Zoom.
You can. Siberia?
Just about.
But that's all right. We'll get it nailed down. So I can come.
I'm away.
Well, let me think of-
The 6th.
Oh,
So we'll do a working session on the 6th, just I don't think it needs to be, it needs to be public and it be here, but it doesn't need to be on Zoom. That's the way we've done them
You
in the
need a
past.
quorum?
No, it's just it's just a subgroup,
Okay,
posted subgroup.
good.
All right, I can work with Betsy and Gail, just get an agenda together. Or,
So if there's not going to be a quorum, do you need a posted meeting?
yes,
Yeah, we need to post it.
Okay.
in our practice.
And we'll need some material, for the- some charts or something.
So,
Comparing.
for the public hearing, well, we actually have posters for,
Yeah,
all
we got
those
all this
issues.
stuff. yeah,
we could
got-
actually put those up in town hall.
Yeah.
We can do that next week. We could sort of also look at those. Why don't we do
We
senior?
don't
ones?
have this thing about the alternates that's not available, is it?
Well, we haven't drafted it yet, so no, it's not available yet.
So, that's what I meant, things like,
Well, we'll just wait.
we were trying to put on a good chase here. Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything else?
Oh, I thought you were gonna talk about 40A.
Would you want one?
I thought you were gonna talk about 40A.
I will at the meeting. I have a little blurb on that for the 13th.
Oh,
Okay.
the 13th are gonna do that, okay.
I thought you were gonna do it tonight.
Little bit on that and update where we stand. That thing gets submitted tomorrow, I think. Right?
It was submitted last week.
Oh, what?
So, can we get a final copy?
Sure.
Thank you.
I mean, I guess for the record, I would like to say I'm really opposed to this working task force. We are elected officials. Our job
This
is,
is what I want to discuss.
but
on
I'm
the
just saying,
13th.
I want it now. I wasn't at that last meeting, so I want it on the record.
Understood, but I want to discuss it on the 13th. I don't want to discuss it.
I just don't want other people creating a task force. I am adamantly opposed to this. We are elected officials to do zoning.
Discuss it and see what the board decides. Okay,
I don't think you can give your power away as an elected official.
I read that. Read your comments. Thank you. We'll see what the board decides. I'll make a presentation and we'll decide what we want to do together. Understood?
I am
Is that
not,
okay? You okay with that?
I'm not giving my elected power away to a
Are
task
you
force.
okay with what the board decides?
I don't think it's actually legal
What the board decides?
to give an elected position power away. If every person on this board can participate in the task force, I'm okay with that.
I'm not gonna get into an argument on
I
this. We're
agree.
not
I-
discussing, we'll be discussing it on the 13th.
Sounds fabulous.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Anybody opposed? We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary, can I just go over this list of typos with you? You have the, you have zoning? I have your list